podcast. I'm Willy, personal injury lawyer and dad. If you're new here, this is a show where we take a real look at the law and the people behind it. No fluff, no legalese, just real talk. Today, we're getting into something I think every lawyer thinks about at some point, whether they admit it or not. And that is what they don't teach you in law school. Now, I want to set the tone right. This isn't me bashing law school. I learned a lot, and I had a great time. But the major gap between the academic side of law and what it actually feels like to practice, especially in personal injury law, is great. So for the next little bit, I want to talk about that. Not from a place of complaining, but a place of honesty. And maybe this will help someone just starting out or a client understand what it is we really do. Law school versus real life. Law school is designed to teach you how to think like a lawyer, and in a lot of ways, it does that really well. You learn how to break down arguments, you read a lot of cases, you write about those cases, spot issues, and work under pressure. But the second that you step out of law school, out of the library, and into the real world of a law firm, you realize that most of your job as a lawyer doesn't look like a final exam. No one in the real world hands you a clean fact pattern and says analyze it. You're not sitting in a quiet room in some law school library thinking for hours about the facts of the case or the legal issues behind it. You're juggling phone calls, emails, clients that are in pain, court deadlines, insurance adjusters, and opposing counsel who may or may not always play fair. And in injury law, it's personal. The people you work with aren't just names on a file or names in the caption of a case in a book. They're living with the fallout of something that wasn't their fault. A car wreck, a bad fall, a life-altering injury, losing a loved one. And you're one of the only people that they have in their corner. It's not just legal strategy, it's advocacy. I say all the time that 99% of the people that call our office aren't looking for an attorney. They're looking for an audience. They want somebody to talk with them about what it is they're going through and to give them a roadmap forward so that they can get through it. It's explaining the system in plain language, helping people understand what to expect, how long things take, shocker, they take a while, and why we're doing what we're doing every step of the way. And most importantly, it's helping people feel seen and heard in a process that often feels cold, overwhelming, slow, and very static. There's a huge emotional weight and mental load that goes with the practice of law that they don't teach you about in law school. Let me just say it plainly. Being a personal injury lawyer can mess with your head. You're human. We spend our day talking to people who are suffering. In general, my clients are going through the worst thing that they have ever gone through in their lives, and I am there helping them through it. So I hear about pain, I hear about trauma, I hear about loss every single day. And while I'm not the one who went through it, I wouldn't be human if I didn't carry some of that with me. And new lawyers will too. We'd be robots if we didn't. I remember a lot of cases throughout the course of my career, but one in particular is a kid who died in a car wreck. And I met with her parents, sat in the living room, looked at the family photos scattered across the wall, and you realize in that moment that these people aren't just clients. They're not just numbers on a file or a case to win or a claim to make against this insurance company or that insurance company. They were grieving parents trying to hold it together. And in their family, something was removed that can never be put back. No matter how much money we're able to get them, no matter how quickly or how slowly the case moves forward through the system, they are never going to get back what it is that they lost. And moments like that never leave you. And they shouldn't, because it's what keeps us grounded. It's what reminds me why I do this. When we talk about helping people, sometimes that's messy because we have to get to know those people. We have to understand what it is they're going through in order to be able to help them through it. And it's not just in those extreme cases. It's the everyday accumulation of pain. Chronic back pain from a car wreck that won't go away. that impacts the chef at the local restaurant every single day of her life, the person who can't return to work, the single parent who suddenly can't pick up their kids because of a neck injury and can't provide financially in the way that they could before that injury. That daily human weight adds up. It wears on you. And most people assume lawyers are cold or detached and that, we're able to compartmentalize every case and just forget about the clients and the cases when we go home. But I believe if you're doing this work right, it becomes a part of you. It gets under your skin. I talk about work-life integration, where our lives become integrated with our work. And we have to learn how to manage that without letting it eat us up. One of the toughest parts of this job then is managing expectations. As the caretaker role in the relationship between client and attorney and managing expectations, we want to be the people that are always saying yes. People come to us hurt, they come to us frustrated, often misinformed. They've watched TV, read clickbait articles, or heard about million-dollar verdicts that don't reflect reality in certain types of cases, or they've talked to their cousin who had a case that wasn't really like theirs 5 years ago, and it went this way. And so my case, which is way more serious, should go that way. Well, law school teaches you how to argue, but it doesn't teach you how to deliver bad news. Like that timeline you found online, not realistic. You're not going to get a check next week no matter how many social media ads tell you that it's possible. Your case may be worth less than the actual harm because the insurance limits or the insurance policy that the defendant had wasn't enough for your type of injury. Those are hard conversations. But having them with compassion and clarity is everything. And that is one of the most important parts of what we do. And it's something that they don't teach you in law school. In law school, they teach us how to analyze the case, how to spot the issues, how to argue. But argument doesn't really help when you're sitting down at a table with someone who's lost their leg and you're delivering the bad news that while their case is probably worth 10 or 15 or 20 million dollars, what's the leg worth after all, that they may only get $100,000 because that's the extent of the insurance policy, and beyond that, the person that injured them doesn't have any collectible assets. And sometimes that can feel like, even though it probably shouldn't, that you failed them. But the truth is, honesty is better than hype. And on the other side of that, you get to be the person who finally gets someone to win. Sometimes we do get that closure, that dignity, that financial breathing room to help people move forward. And that part, that's what makes all the stress worth it. But they don't teach you how to handle that part in law school either. In law school, it's a zero-sum game. Everything is graded on a curve, and you're either at the front of the curve or the back of the curve or the middle of the curve. When you go into trial advocacy competitions in law school, you're scoring points for a win. You want to win the trial. You want to win the case. You want to win the competition. But oftentimes in the real world of personal injury law, there aren't really winners. There are people that have suffered a huge loss on the front end, and we spend the next several months or years trying to put as much back together for them as possible. But the truth is, it doesn't always get put back together. That family I told you about that I met with when they lost their daughter in a car wreck, and seeing those photos in their living room, those photos were never complete again. It didn't matter that we were able to get them a significant recovery for the loss of their daughter. It didn't matter that we were able to prove that she did nothing wrong. It didn't matter that they got a legal win or a legal victory, because the loss that they suffered at the beginning of that could never be fixed. The only thing that the law allows in a situation like that is that we can help it and make up for it in some small measure, but we can never fix it. And so there are no winners. There is no idea that that family is ever celebrating no matter how much money they get. And so we have to remember as lawyers and, frankly, as clients and people out there in the real world, that when we see these advertisements on social media or on TV, while people are happy with their lawyer and proud of their lawyer for that result probably doesn't mean that their problem was fixed. And when we're catastrophically injured or we lose someone that we love, that is not going to be fixed through the law. That's not, the law doesn't have the capacity to fix those types of serious losses. All it can do is help and make up for them in some small manner. And in our system, it's by money. That's just the way that we do it here in America. Is it a perfect system? No, of course not. But it's the best system that we figured out as human beings. I always tell people that before we had a civil justice system and we're dealing with money, there were legal systems, and there still are around the world, where they have eye for an eye justice or leg for a leg justice. We don't have that here because that's barbaric. And we know that sometimes people make mistakes that cause serious injuries. And the way that we help and make up for those injuries is through money. Because money can make someone's life a little bit easier who's lost a leg. It can buy them a better prosthetic that their health insurance may not allow for. It can pay for home renovations to make the doors in their home wider so that they can fit a wheelchair through them, as opposed to having to get out of the wheelchair and kind of move sideways through every hallway. It can lower their counters and raise their cabinets so that they're able to function like human beings, as close to the function that they had before the injury. Is it perfect? No, of course not. They're never going to get the leg back that God gave them if they lost a leg, or they're never going to get, obviously, the child back if they lose a child. But it can help and make up for those types of injuries, and that's what the law does. And at the end of the day, that very soft side of practicing law is something that law schools don't teach you, at least not the law school that I went to. That was something that I learned, and probably could only learn, frankly, by sitting in those living rooms and sitting across those tables from people that had actually been through it. I don't think it's something you can adequately learn through reading about it or role play or watching movies about it. It's a lived experience, and once you have that, you never lose it. And it builds over time. Having, now helped thousands of people over the course of my career, sat in, many living rooms and many tables with people that have been through the worst thing in their life, you realize that no two stories are the same, but in many ways they are all the same. They've all suffered some loss through no fault of their own, and they're seeking help. They're seeking help from an attorney to not fix, but help and make up for the loss that they've been through. And that's what we do. And by the way, while we're doing that to make a living, right? We have families to feed and bills to pay just like everyone else. And that's another thing that law school doesn't teach you, by the way, which is how to run a practice. Sure. Many law schools, mine included, have a class, maybe I don't know, 3-credit class, 1 semester on how to run a law practice or how to start your own law firm. But how practices actually work, how law firms actually function, is not something that law schools are really adept at teaching, because at their base, law firms are made up of people. They're made up of imperfect people because we're all imperfect, and so they're imperfect organizations. And so, as a law practice runs, it's called a practice for a reason, you learn things as you go. And those are things that are unique to your experience, but, are not unique in the larger business world. And I always say, we're not just a lawyer. In many ways, we're project managers. We're obviously communicators. We're obviously therapists in some settings. Obviously not licensed therapists, but we do serve as therapists. And sometimes even salespeople. We have to sell cases to a jury who don't know anything about this case before it comes to them, or sell cases to an insurance adjuster who, like us, hears dozens of these cases, every month, every year. And so what makes our client's case different? And so running a practice, you have to do all those things, but you also have to track cases. You have to track their progress. You have to make sure you don't miss important deadlines. You have to manage a team. You have to market your law firm to keep the lights on, right? Particularly as you hire people, you bring in people who are now dependent on you producing for your clients so that they can feed their families and they can pay the bills that they need to pay. And that business pressure is very real, especially if you're in a contingency fee model, which is what almost all personal injury law firms work off of. Law firms like ours, where you don't get paid until the case resolves, and then only if you win. We happen to have a pretty high win ratio, and so we generally get our clients paid and generally get paid, on the cases that we win. But that takes time. And that means you might work for a year or more before earning anything on that particular case. While you're doing that, you have to front the costs. You have to stay organized. You have to make sure that you have the resources to fund the case and prosecute the case in a way that gives the clients the best chance of success. And you have to keep morale high when the inevitable bad thing happens during the course of a case or during the course of a quarter in business. And no professor, in law school really prepares you for that. I mean, I think back to a lot of the classes that I had, and we talk about, billable hours, and billable hours is what is often talked about in law school as sort of the prevalent model, and I guess it is. More law firms probably work off billable hours than contingency fees if you just kind of did a per capita model. But that's not obviously what we do, and that's not what I've done. As an attorney in a law firm, I've never worked at a law firm that does hourly billing outside of class action cases where you have to track your hours, but you don't necessarily get paid by your hours. You still have to win. And so it's different. You can do a lot of work and never get paid for it, or not get paid for it for a very long time. And so, that part of the practice is not something that law school, prepares us for, and something, frankly, that most clients, I think, don't think about, right? Because as humans, obviously, if something doesn't affect us, most of the time, we don't really spend a lot of time thinking about it naturally. It's human nature. And so I don't think a lot of people give a lot of thought to, these contingency fee lawyers, they don't get paid until they collect for the client. And sometimes that can require quite an investment, both of time and money, to prosecute that case. So that's another, I think, really important piece of what they don't teach you in law school. The other piece that they don't teach you in law school, of course, you hear about a lot of great lawyers, people that they consider, great lawyers, people that have prosecuted some of the most important cases in the country, lawyers like, Thurgood Marshall. But what they don't tell you or teach you is what it takes on a day-to-day basis, to get there. And let me break down what actually matters in practice, at least in my experience. These are just a few things that, I think are really critical to develop a habit of so that you can best serve your clients as you practice law. Number one is follow through. Doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, period. It builds trust. There is a lack of execution, a lack of follow through throughout the professional world today, but particularly in law. And part of that stems from this honesty that I think is really important with your clients and with your team. When someone asks you to do something, you want to be able to say yes, but it might be a yes but, right? Like, if you're at capacity and you're not going to be able to get to that this week, it's perfectly acceptable to say, yes, I will do that and I will get it to you by next Thursday. Or yes, I will do that and I will get it to you in 2 weeks. whatever level of time it's going to take, but then you have to follow through on it. So you have to make sure that you're giving yourself enough window and enough room to actually get it done. And the next is responsiveness. I mean, I said earlier that most clients call and they don't really want an attorney, they want an audience. Clients want to know someone's there. So, if a client calls, even if you don't have an update, call them back, obviously, check in. It's one of the number one complaints against lawyers is that they would not communicate, with me. So over communicate, explain to them all the problems. You're not there to, defend the system as the best system in the world. Tell them it takes a long time. Here is why, particularly after COVID, we've had a COVID backlog in a lot of the courts. Things are just taking longer. So be honest with the clients, be responsive, check in. Don't make promises that are outside of your control, like, oh, we're going to get you your check next week, if you just got the case and you know that that is extremely unlikely. Clarity is another important one. Speak plainly. Don't hide behind legal jargon. Make your client feel informed, not confused. Clarity is key, particularly when dealing with clients. And, they want to feel heard, but they also want to understand what's going on. And if you speak to them like human beings, they will understand and you will have a better relationship because of that. It's really critical. And so is empathy. You don't need to cry in every meeting, obviously, but you do need to care. I say all the time to our associates, look, you can be the smartest person in the room, but if the client doesn't feel like they were heard, if they don't feel like you're on their side, if they don't feel like you actually care about their situation, no matter how much case law you can cite and legal jargon you can use, they will find somebody who they feel like cares about them, because most people at that valley in their life, while they're looking for an attorney, they're primarily looking for an audience. They want somebody who cares. So care. And you can't fake it. People know if you're faking it. So, candidly, personal injury work, working in this field is not for everybody. It's not for everybody who graduates law school. And if you don't have the ability to be empathetic, if you don't have the ability to care, it's probably not a really good field for you, right? Because that is the foundation, that is the baseline of what we're doing. If you don't naturally have that ability, the mental load of trying to carry it can be devastating. And, this job, candidly, can be isolating as it is. It can be exhausting. We're carrying our client stress, we're carrying our own stress, we're trying to, do everything all at once perfectly. And there's a weight associated with that. Burnout, in this profession is real and it's rarely talked about. But if you really don't believe in it and it's really not in your core, those things are only exasperated. They only happen faster. And clients know. They can tell because they are people. They know a faker when they see it. And so even if you're not a faker, even if you really do care, there's still a load associated. And so, one of the things that I think law school tries to teach, but I'm not sure does a great job of it, is that even in your work, you need routines, you need boundaries, you need to unplug. If you're struggling, you need to reach out. There's no weakness in reaching out, only strength. Some of the best lawyers I know have therapists. I'm a huge believer in therapy. Get a therapist, get coaches, get supportive partners and friends who can help process everything that you take on. It's not useful, helpful, or beneficial to try to compartmentalize some of these things that you're going to be seeing on a daily basis. And so, make sure that you have a routine, that you have a system in place to process these things, because you can't pour from an empty cup. If you're running on fumes, your work and your life, they'll suffer, candidly. I think we all know that, but I think it's something that is not said enough. Law school builds us up and tells us we're special. We hear the stats about how many people, wanted to be lawyers and didn't go to law school or didn't go to LSAT or whatever the case may be. You know these percentages on bar passage rates. I don't even know why they use those. They're totally not useful for anything, candidly, in the public realm. But we have these methods of comparison where we're constantly compared. Step back. You're only in this for your clients, yourself. Make sure you have routines. Make sure you have a process. You don't have to compare yourself to others. And law school doesn't do a very good job at that, in my view. The weight of what we do on a daily basis is significant. Every lawyer has cases that stay with them, some because they were huge results, some because they were tragic losses, some because they remind us of why we got into this work in the first place. And we all have those cases. I had a case where a grandmother, helping to raise her grandkids and working with her kids, had an injury in a store, okay? And she ended up, as a result of that, losing her leg. And the company lowballed it, offered very insignificant money. But, we fought that and we won. We won a significant 8-figure jury verdict. And when we got that verdict, she grabbed my hand and started crying, and she said, finally, not because it was a windfall, but because someone, 12 people, finally believed her and believed that her pain mattered after everything she had been through. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Not chasing headlines, but showing up and doing right by people. So if you're just starting out, here's what I'd say. Here's the hit list. Find mentors, not just brilliant ones, decent ones. The kind who treat clients and staff with respect. Take care of yourself. That means sleep. That means exercise. That means eating right. And that means breaks. You won't know everything. That's okay. Ask questions. Keep learning. Own your mistakes. You'll make them. What matters is how you handle them. And be human. You don't have to pretend to be a machine. Being real builds trust, and importantly, it helps you take care of yourself. So yeah, there's a lot they don't teach you in law school, but honestly, that's part of the journey. You learn it in real time, through trial and error, through hard conversations. But at the end of the day, if you practice with integrity, stay curious, and remember who you're fighting for, you'll be just fine. So, thanks for listening. If this episode hit home with you, shoot me a message or share it with someone who might need to hear it. I'm always open to topics, questions, and good conversations. I'm Willy, and this is the Law Dad Roy podcast. Thanks for listening.